In wrestling, there's wrestlers that are often ridiculously overpowered. We've seen this time and time again, but I don't want to waste your time, let's get into it. The expansion of the WWF in the early 80s brought many different opportunities and situations for what was once a regional company. Vince McMahon had a different vision to take over the US and become an international promotion. Hulk Hogan was a big reason for WWF's rapid growth in the 80s, and to understand his popularity, if you mention wrestling to somebody, the first person they always think of is Hulk Hogan. Very charismatic and larger-than-life wrestler that redefined the word wrestler. Hogan was a marquee name for the WWF and eventually WCW. His box office drawing power compares to almost nobody in the entire industry, barring Stone Cold Steve Austin. In ring, he was booked like he was a superhero. I mean, what else do you expect for somebody who's considered to be the hero of America? He's often been very protective of his spot throughout his career, and that showed a lot with his matches. He'd go down, take a beating, but would always come back and hit the boot and leg drop to send the fans home happy. Hogan was the WWF champion for 4 years, and unlike a lot of previous champions, he had many more televised title defenses and threatening foes such as Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, King Kong Bundy, and of course Andre the Giant. Hogan was the strongest of the bunch in the land of giants, and no matter what happened during his matches, he would always end up on top, even later on during his career. His first real title loss against the Ultimate Warrior was barely a loss because this man kicked out at 3.5. At one point, he was the second oldest WWF champion, beating prime Triple H clean right after he won the title a month earlier. This man was 49 and considered old by this point, yet he was still being booked like he was a 94 overall wrestler. Hogan's booking was one of the most overpowered I've ever seen in wrestling, but that's a part of the reason why he was such a megastar. You can't book a wrestler like this now. It can't work, not to mention Hogan was overprotective of his position. This is something a lot of people hate him for, but you have to look at it from another perspective. We have reasons to dislike Hogan or whatever, but let's be honest for a moment. How many people would not protect their spot like that, especially in the 80s and 90s? I will say though that there's some moments that were ridiculous. The fact that he beat Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9 at about a minute after Bret Hart struggled to take him down and acted like a baby, being like, beat that bully up, and he just beat him like that. He's like, voila, I'm champion now. But regardless of this, there's still more overpowered wrestlers in this video. Hogan just might be number 1 on that list. He's around there for sure. The Ultimate Warrior's debut in the WWF was sudden and quickly established him as a talent to watch out for. He was doing squash matches with some of the most intensity, and this was a roster that was nose deep in coke and featured Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. Those two had the most intensity out of any wrestlers in history, yet he was up there with them. He rose up the ranks, and before you knew it, he was primed for a main event push. Even when he lost the Intercontinental Championship, it was a very dirty win for Rick Rude. Warrior was very overpowered heading into WrestleMania 6 against Hulk Hogan. The match did turn out to be good, and Warrior ended up being the first person to actually beat Hogan. His entire WWF run was him looking strong and barely losing. He never actually lost a match. When he was back in 1996, he destroyed Hunter Hearst Helmsley in 2 minutes. He no-sold his pedigree and obliterated him so bad that this might have been the origins of the shovel. WCW, Warrior feuded with Hogan and had to have a fireball thrown at him like he was a Marvel character to lose. His entire career is strange, but through it all, he was always booked like a superhero. He was almost protected more than Hogan, and again, similar to him, Warrior didn't like losing. He just didn't like it at all, and it showed during his career. The Undertaker's debut in the WWF was unlike any other. He was an undead Western wizard that no-sold everything and won every match. That's Hogan's dream. Taker's first year was very strong and something that not many wrestlers get to experience. He even won the WWF Championship, which he would quickly lose to Hogan, of course, but that strong booking would remain a staple of his career. Undertaker never had an entire year where he was 99 overall and untouchable, but whenever his feud would get serious, he'd bring his very best and look like the final boss of final bosses. Yokozuna tried to take him out, he returned and ended that feud on top. Mankind buried him alive, yet he returned a month later and took him out. Kane, who was a better version of Undertaker initially, a far more powerful version of his brother, a man that shoots fireballs and looked unstoppable, walked into WrestleMania 14 and took a then record 3 tombstones, which finally got Taker the win. Kane looked too strong in that match, but his brother Undertaker was much better. Transitioning into his ministry arc, Undertaker had a certain aura around him. He felt at his most intimidating here, and for a short time was the scariest wrestler in the WWF. I'd say this version of him is the most overpowered, but it didn't last too long, not to mention he was associated with the McMahon family, so he was doing cheap tactics when he didn't need to. He would always use his special boost for WrestleMania though. If you had to choose just one version of Undertaker, you're gonna choose WrestleMania Undertaker over the Ministry version. It's just the Ministry version was an era, you know? WrestleMania Undertaker comes once a year. His career in general is very overpowered, and whenever he'd appear in the 2000s and 10s, there's a feeling there, and that's because of how well he was booked. Kane had been hyped up before his debut as the brother of The Undertaker. When he did come in, he was seen as the biggest threat The Undertaker faced, and one he didn't have an answer to. For a short time, Kane was booked more powerful than Undertaker ever was. Then came WrestleMania 14. Sure, he lost, but it took the greatest performance from Undertaker's career to take him down. It didn't take long for him to win the WWF Championship in a first run match. Austin did win it the next night, but that's Stone Cold Steve Austin we're talking about. 1998 was a very strong year for Kane. He was scary and menacing, and it turned into a meme. You know, every time you hear 98 Kane, you think of a tough guy who almost never lost. The rest of his career, though, wasn't for the most part, wasn't scary and menacing. Even when he unmasked, his push didn't last long. For a short time, though, he was at his scariest since 1998, and this man was indestructible. Shane McMahon threw him in fire, and he came back like he was CJ in San Andreas. So he did something else. A limousine. Shane used a limousine, and he pushed him in there and pressed the gas to send him into a truck. Back like Michael DeSanta. He had some scars, but it was no problem. Kane was a supervillain in 2003, and it makes it look dumb how he was prevented from winning the world title. Literally and figuratively. Other than that, he wasn't booked strong in his career. He was mostly a mid-card guy, an upper mid-card guy, you know, him and Big Show. They're always used to put over someone. Triple H seems like a weird inclusion in this video, but I had my reasons for why he's in here. The game established himself as one of the most dominant wrestlers in 1999. Triple H won the title, and even though he had every enemy watching on close, he didn't care and at times welcomed it by trying to take them out. Triple H got himself thrown in an ambulance, and Austin crashed that vehicle, and he still showed up on Raw that following week. He almost got bitten by a rattlesnake, but used it to his benefit by goading Austin and even killing that rattlesnake. Stone Cold was in his prime, and he couldn't figure out a way to overcome the game. He never won back the title from him as well, which is something to mention. Triple H got him ran over, and upon Austin's return, he tipped over his car, and that should have killed him. But this man returned a week later, and he was angrier. He overcame Stone Cold in a 3 stages of hell match, went away after injury, and won the Undisputed Championship after 2 months of his return. He was a bit overpowered in 1999, 2000, and 2001. Like, there's just something there, especially as a heel. Evolution Triple H wasn't as overpowered, but had a lot of plot armor, not to mention was positioned as the final boss of Raw. A student of the game and one of the best around, but even if you dealt with him, you still needed to go through Ric Flair, a man that's considered to be one of the greatest, and despite his age, he had plenty of tricks up his sleeve. Batista, a powerhouse and a menacing figure, and Randy Orton, a man with all the potential in the world and somebody that learned from the Nature Boy and that game. All of this adds to Triple H's presentation and makes him seem a lot more powerful than he is. I don't think he was too overpowered as a character because he wasn't winning clean, but when you add everything, he was very powerful, and I thought it made sense to include him in this video. Every once in a while, a wrestler would get a huge push that doesn't fit with their booking. Hardcore Holly is a big example of that. After being taken out by Brock Lesnar, Holly was a man that had nothing to lose. He suddenly became a 90 overall wrestler and feuded with the WWE champion. He had so much intensity in those 2 months that even Brock Lesnar was scared of him. Anytime he wore those jeans, he became unstoppable. Big Show got destroyed by him, and I don't mean destroyed by losing. He obliterated him in a street fight. That's how big it was. This push didn't last long, but for a short time, Holly was very strong. Hulk Hogan's run at the top was a template WWE used from there on. Stone Cold followed up, and after some tough times, it ended up being John Cena. Cena was strongly protected throughout his run and had a different kind of push compared to Hogan. In a nutshell, it was just that, but it was modernized and done in a way that was more in line with weekly TV. Cena wasn't super pushed like he was on an entirely different level initially, but it started to show a lot more as time went on. The best version of Cena to show someone to prove he was overpowered was 2007. He overcame every challenge in front of him and lost the title because of injury. Super Cena was a real thing at the time, but when WWE went PG, he entered his final form. No matter what happened, no matter what title he lost, by the end, he was gonna stand on top. The reason why I say he's overpowered is because some of his moments were ridiculous. I Quit matches, he turned into Matt from Wii Sports. Those were his matches because he'd absorbed some of the biggest beatings from Batista and The Miz, yet he'd make them quit. The Miz one was so bad and showed how overpowered Cena was that Miz was expelled from the main event scene after it. He still came back and made him tap out in embarrassing fashion. John Cena in his prime was on another level because sure, he'd lose the battle, but he always won the war. Nexus jumped him. He had no answer, but he still goes with it. DDT on the concrete floor, still manages to overcome Justin Gabriel and Wade Barrett. Then he takes out the entire group one by one and had them pissing their pants. It was a purple grape, yet they were stuttering and shaking at the thought of dealing with him. They made their name at his expense, but by the end, he destroyed the group to the point where they kicked out their own leader, Wade Barrett. Cena wasn't always untouchable, but whenever he entered his final form, it was always going to end the same way. And I'd put him up against almost everyone in this video. It's awesome too brought a very unique wrestler that had the size, speed, and agility. These three attributes weren't maxed out like they were for Brock Lesnar before. The Beast took WWE by storm en route to a King of the Ring win. He obliterated the Hardys, RVD, Test, and Hulk Hogan. All of these were in convincing manner. This all set up a huge battle with The Rock. Brock was unlike anything seen before in WWE, and it's also important to mention that he was a rookie during all of this. Brock continued this momentum, winning the title from The Rock and beating The Undertaker at his own game, Hell in a Cell. He was super overpowered and treated like a mythical figure that just so happens to be very good at wrestling. It wasn't just his booking that made him look overpowered, but it's also because of his attributes. He was dangerous on the ground and could out-wrestle you. He could become aggressive and just overthrowing his opponents like they were nothing, including the Big Show and Rikishi. Those two were treated like cruiserweights with Brock. He almost sounds like a video game character, but he was actually doing this stuff. And what about the shooting star press? That thing, he had it in his back pocket and didn't even use it. His second run was much different. He came into a former UFC heavyweight champion, and while he seemed beatable initially, that changed with WrestleMania 30. Brock faced the strongest version of Undertaker, WrestleMania Undertaker, over, and he ended the streak with 3 F5s. One of the most surprising results in wrestling history. The fact that WWE would book this was shocking on a whole nother level. And with that, Brock became the final boss of all final bosses. Probably the most overpowered version of a wrestler ever. He killed John Cena's prime and ended the name Super Cena with a demolishing a SummerSlam to win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Brock was 99 overall and had a certain aura surrounding him for the next couple of years. He almost never lost, in one way or another would end up with the belt. His booking had its reasons for being the way it was. One of them was to set up Roman Reigns, but regardless of that, Brock's legitimacy outside WWE was always going to be the main reason why he's the way he is in WWE. Now, I had this guy on the list. We had them on the list, but I was like, why not just extend it to a second part? I thought it was a bit wrong to not include him here, even though he was originally supposed to be, so I thought, why not? It would be wrong of me to not include him in this video. The most iconic name of the Attitude Era and perhaps wrestling history, Stone Cold Steve Austin. His career skyrocketed with a move to the WWF as it provided him the chance he was looking for in WCW. Austin became the face of the WWF and the one who brought the fight to his former employer. Stone Cold's booking was almost bulletproof, as he'd need some huge odds against him or some crazy 64D chess moves from the likes of Mr. McMahon and Triple H. He went through Kane and The Undertaker on a few occasions, and even when he lost the title, it was because they both pinned him. Austin never lost his momentum throughout most of the Attitude Era. In 1999, he went face to face with the Corporation, Big Show, The Rock, and of course The Boss. And even with these brilliant moves to take the title off him, he'd always come back and regain it. Stone Cold was so overpowered that he buried The Undertaker alive, with the help of Kane, just want to mention, and forced McMahon to create a super group that would be a threat to the Avengers, that is, the corporate ministry. There was like 100 of them in the ring and Austin could care less. He cut through that faction and caused them to disband. They looked untouchable, but it ended up being Austin as the reason for why they had to go their separate ways. He was pretty strong for the rest of the Attitude Era, but 1998 and 1999 was where he was on fire. Even after retirement, he's overpowered. Austin almost never looks weak, even in front of the current talent. One of the most overpowered wrestlers in history. So with that said, let's give my quick overalls for each wrestler. Hulk Hogan, 99 overall. Ultimate Warrior, 96 overall. He didn't wrestle as often as the others, otherwise he'd be higher. Undertaker, if you're talking prime Undertaker, 97, but WrestleMania 99 overall, easily. Kane, prime Kane, this one's a bit hard, 96 overall. Prime Triple H, 96 overall. Hardcore Holly, 89 overall, easy. John Cena, 98 or 99. I'm gonna lean towards 99, why not? Brock Lesnar, 02 Brock, 97, especially because he was a rookie. But 2014 Brock, 99. I just have to give it. I know it seems like I'm throwing 99s out here, but these are a few of the most overpowered wrestlers in history. There's not many people, if we're looking at it like from a certain point of view and storyline and kayfabe and all that, that actually have the 99 overall. Stone Cold, prime Stone Cold, I'm gonna go towards 99, why not? I personally think Stone Cold in his prime would actually beat Hulk Hogan if they actually had a match in kayfabe, so there's that. Alright, that's the overpowered wrestlers. Now, I'm gonna do a sequel to this video most likely because I gotta focus on another long video. That'll be coming soon, but this was nice. I actually liked making this one because it was very different. Some wrestlers, sometimes they just look ridiculous with the booking. Others, it's more natural like Stone Cold and whatnot. But like some people, it's just ridiculous, so yeah. Alright, what do you guys think of the overpowered wrestlers? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the AA on the like button and perhaps the stunner on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.